guys, this is Mike, your host of Craft a Beer Storm, and this is our segment called Beer Styles, where we go down the GABF, Great American Beer Festival guidelines for beers being entered into their contest yearly, and this is the latest one, so we just go down the list just to show you that there's just loads of different types of beer, not just pale ales and IPAs, and there are just many different types of beer. And this week we are going to do wood and barrel aged beer, which is very interesting. It's just basically it's taking your normal beer. Well, not all craft beer is normal. It's awesome. But we age it in barrels, which have been previously used for things like wine or bourbon, tequila. Like the sky's the limit. So you can get very creative with this. So wood and barrel aged beer, and there's different categories as well. We'll talk about 2 subcategories for wood and barrel aged beer, and then we'll do some other subsequent podcasts expanding that and just showing you how many different what you can do with beer in these barrels and conditioning them. So for wood and barrel aged beer, these are any traditional or experimental style of lager, ale, or hybrid beer aged in either a wooden barrel or in contact with wood. So it doesn't necessarily have to sit in the barrel, condition in the barrel for a couple months. You can introduce wood into the beer, and then the beer soaks up that wood flavor and anything that's associated with that wood flavor. Mostly home brewers do this, but commercial, usually we buy barrels, and we have racks, and we just stack them up, and then just transfer beer into them and just let them sit. And it's awesome. These beers are aged with the intention of developing unique attributes imparted by the wood and or by liquids that had previously been stored in contact with the wood. So, like I was saying, either wine or bourbon, whiskey, all kinds of stuff. So wood aging does not necessarily impart the wood flavors, but does result in a distinctive sensory outcomes. Used sherry, rum, whiskey, tequila, port, wine, and other barrels are often used, imparting complexity and uniqueness to a beer. A balance of aroma, flavor, and mouthfeel results from the marriage of new beer with attributes imparted by the wood or barrel. So there's just a lot of flavors going on when you condition beer. So the 2 categories, one is the A, which is a subcategory. It's wood and barrel aged pale to amber beer. So this is one of your lighter beers that you would condition in a barrel. And the color of the pale, it would be pale to amber. And then within the framework of these guidelines, these beers are less than 18 SRM. Now, what does SRM mean? SRM stands for Standard Reference Method, and this is a scale devised by scientists to describe how light or dark a beer is. So, say for a scale of 0 to 40, where 0 is clear, right? You wouldn't have really clear beer, but it'd be probably some number. Like a pale ale, right? Lighter color. And then 40, which is the extreme, which is black, that would be like a Russian Imperial Stout. Really dark beer, like oil colored, but it's delicious though. I don't know if you've tried Russian Imperial Stouts, but they're fantastic. Even that's another category in itself, but we're just talking about wood now, aging. The clarity varies with the underlying style. As I said, it depends on the beer that you condition. The perceived malt aroma and flavor, it varies depending on the beer. Hop aroma and flavor and bitterness varies as well. The body varies. It could be a thinner beer, like a pale ale, or Russian Imperial Stout, it's a little thicker. And then the ABV would be, they give you a range. It's 3.8 to 6.3% ABV. So this is on the lower end of the range for this category and these subcategories. But usually pale ales and lighter ales don't really have a lot of, they don't start with a lot of sugar, so the yeast can attack them and create a higher ABV. So it's on the lower end for pale and amber beer. The second subcategory is wood and barrel aged dark beer. Now the color for this would be a dark copper to black. And within the framework of these guidelines, these beers are greater than 18 SRM. So 18 SRM, so we're halfway there, 0 to 40, so it's greater than half, about greater than half in terms of color. So you know it's going to be a darker beer, much darker than the amber and the pale ales. So for clarity, this varies with the underlying style, depending on the style of beer that you're using. The perceived malt aroma and flavor varies as well. The hop aroma, flavor, and bitterness varies depending on the beer that you're using. Body varies as well. But the ABV, within the framework of these guidelines, these beers contain alcohol less than 6.3% ABV when consumed. So it's a little darker beers, but the ABV is it's not off the scale, and that's just in this category, right? There are other categories which are higher ABV, and just some examples throwing out there, which might be a little higher ABV, but usually the beers that are aged in these barrels are higher ABV, and it just the wood adds a lot more complexity to it. I've aged in Jim Beam barrel, used Jim Beam barrels, which we got from Allagash. Got to get you on Allagash Brewer, and they sell them to me, and we age them in Jim Beam barrels for about 2 or 3 months. I've done a pale ale in them. We've had our Survivor, which is our pale ale, and that came out pretty good. It just changed the whole beer. It just imparted the wood and bourbon flavor. We've also done our stout in it, right? Which is more typical of a barrel aged beer, and that's delicious. And then we had a strong ale, which is really good too. Then we added some maple syrup into it, and it's just dynamite. Good stuff. And then for an example of what you can get near you, Sierra Nevada Brewing Company out in California has their Trip in the Woods series, and they've been taking their beers and just aging it in wood barrels. The first one example would be a barrel-aged maple scotch, right? This is the style would be a Scotch ale, which is a wee heavy ale. It's a stronger ale. It's a higher ABV. A lot of malt. The ABV on that would be 9.8% for the Trip in the Woods barrel-aged maple scotch. And they describe it as a Scotch ale brewed with maple syrup and aged in bourbon barrels. Very simple, but very delicious. So you take their strong ale, age it in barrels. It just changes the whole beer, and it just adds so much complexity, and it's delicious. Trip in the Woods, Norwal, a bourbon barrel aged with red and black currants. So Sierra Nevada Brewing Company is another one. Trip in the Woods. The style is a Russian Imperial Stout. So Norwal normally is a Russian Imperial Stout. It's delicious, but then you bourbon barrel age it with red and black currants. Imagine. I haven't had it, but I must look for it. But I've had Norwal. It's very good. Russian River, also Ken Grossman. We got to get you on. We're looking for you. A malt-forward monster, highlighting the depths of malt flavor. That's what the description says. Norwal Imperial Stout is inspired by the mysterious creature that thrives in the deepest fathoms of the frigid Arctic Ocean. Featuring incredible depth and malt flavor, rich with notes of espresso, baker's cocoa, roasted grain, and a light hint of smoke. And Norwal is a massive malt-forward monster, aggressive but refined, with a velvety smooth body and a decadent finish. And Norwal with age in the bottle for years to come. So you can just keep Norwal in the bottle. But what they did is they aged it in bourbon barrels, as I mentioned, and red and black currants. So imagine, just like itself, it's delicious. So many different flavors: espresso, cocoa. You got that maltiness, and then imagine putting it in a barrel and taking on all that wood and bourbon flavor. So this stuff is awesome. Wood aged beer. If you go into a bar or restaurant, they have wood aged barrel aged beer. Grab some. You will not be disappointed. It's delicious. We have some other categories to go over, but that will be in subsequent podcasts. There's 2 other ones which we'll do. So stay tuned for next week. We'll get you another one, and then the week after that, because there's just so much to talk about this. And that's our wood and barrel aged beer beer style segment for today. And if you like what we're doing, if you like our podcast, please go on to iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review. You're available on iTunes, Stitcher. It's posted on YouTube. And the only way we can get up in the category, a beer category or food category whatsoever, is to get reviews and ratings from you. And that helps us. That gives us feedback on what you're thinking. And I'd appreciate it if you can't do anything, just go and do that for me. Take 2 minutes and do it. It just takes, click on it on iTunes. Also tell a friend, tell 10 friends. We're 10X here, as I mentioned. We had the Grant Cardone conference was over the weekend. It was fantastic. A lot of great speakers. We're going to implement those things here and get this thing moving. Get it out to you. Got a lot of plans for this year, actually. Been talking to a lot of people, both here and also abroad in Ireland. Had a lot of great conversations with people. So stay tuned for that. Next stop is the Brewers Festival Craft Brewers Festival in Denver in early April, and that's going to be fantastic. A lot of people there, a lot of great knowledge. If you can get in, because there's just a lot of stuff there. Okay, that is our podcast for today. I love you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.